What's going on? It's good to see you again. Thank you so much for tuning in to another broadcast of Heart to Heart Conversations to Heal a Broken Heart. So I'm Dr. Batiste. I'm an interventional cardiologist. Actually, I'm a lifestyle interventional cardiologist. I believe in using all the tools in my tool shed to really help you transform your life. And so I'm coming to you this June 2024, and I'm excited because number one, it's Men's Health Month. Number two, it's Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And we had some recent late breaking news that came through over the past couple of weeks that is just phenomenal. But this time, Chef AJ, I know we couldn't get here and connect. I have a special treat for you. Some of you know that I dropped my first book, Selfish, A Cure for a Stressed and Broken Heart. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just for women. It's not just for men. It's for teens, it's for professionals, it's for all of you out there. But the point of this conversation right now is we're really going to dig into men's health. And so I'm excited. Let's just jump into this right now. You know, one of the things here that we talk about inside this Men's Health Awareness Month is really just the impact of what's going on. And, you know, a lot of times, many of you men out there, so you women, you may have heard this, maybe you said this to the men in your lives, is man up, right? It's like, okay, you know, when they're acting a particular way, you say man up. And what exactly does that mean to man up? What does it mean to man up? Well, the Oxford Dictionary, right? I mean, this is where we have to go to. I mean, as a kid, my dad would sit there and we'd have dictionaries and he said, what is your diction? You know, enunciate your words, go look it up. And we'd have to go to the dictionary. And that's kind of a lost art this day and age. We just Google it. We do a quick search. But man up, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, says it's to demonstrate toughness or courage when faced with a difficult situation. Now that's good, right? I mean, it's hard to kind of say anything negative about manning up in that context. But here's the thing, the connotation that it seems to have taken on in society, that as our young kids from childhood all the way up through adulthood, we're saying things like, boys don't cry, man up, be a real man. And here's the worst part, don't be such a girl, right? Now, I know I have a mother, I had a grandmother before she passed, I have sisters, I have a wife, I have daughters too as well. They're all bosses. They're strong and dominant. So I'll tell you, it's not a bad thing to be a girl, to be like a woman or whatever else, because they're extremely intelligent, smart, and intentional. And so what some of these studies out there have shown, I kind of did a little research, that 8 in 10 agree that there is a societal pressure that men behave in a certain way. This is according to the surveys out there. And what they found is they surveyed about 2,000 men, and they found that half of them feel pressure from all these different expectations of life. That some of these expectations include that all of a sudden I'm supposed to know how to be handy around the house. I'm gonna tell you, my dad always said, I make more money by thinking than I do by doing. So he didn't do a lot of hands-on things around the house. My wife's dad did a little bit more. My brother-in-law did a whole lot more, right, than I did. But that I'm supposed to inherently know how to be handy around the house. I can put stents in your heart and I can advise you to transform your lifestyle. That you're supposed to be feeling compelled to act a certain way in front of others, to be manly, or feeling pressure to have a specific body type. Now, not everybody's going to have muscles up like me, but no, I'm just joking. But you know, one of the things is that there's a lot of pressures that we oftentimes don't equate to this idea of manning up, or that our men in our lives have to deal with. And so when we look at another study, basically looked at the average man experiences insecurity over 900 times throughout the year. Now, I personally think that's a level of under expectation of assessment. I believe that many people feel this sense of insecurity as if they don't have everything all together. But yet men feel misunderstood, especially in romantic relationships, 31%, their sense of humor, 29%. I know my humor, my wife is always kind of looking at my humor and kind of raising an eyebrow. Also, their financial acumen, that not every man is excellent when it comes to this idea of finances. And so all these pressures are there that two-thirds of men, about 65, 66%, they talk about this idea about being a man, right? And these respondents say they feel stigmatized by topics in society, that they can't be emotional or show emotional sensitivities. Their sex lives or their mental health significantly are impaired or impacted. Now, a lot of times in sports, you oftentimes hear the word, are you hurt or are you injured? Now, for those of you not familiar with sports as much, they're saying get back in the game irrespective of how you feel and that you need to work through it. You need to man up. And there's actually studies looking at what is the impact of this in terms of longevity. And we've seen this demonstrated inside of professional sports of the head trauma. We see it in terms of the cardiac arrest and this idea that, you know what, guess what? If whether you're hurt, you're injured, or you're mentally impaired, they're all a risk to your body. They're a risk to your future, to your performance, and they have to be addressed with. And as a result of this, we see that many men view health complaints as a sign of weakness. They're not going to go to the doctors. They're going to stay far away because guess what? They've been told to man up since childhood, to bear it, to go through it. Cleveland Clinic reported, they said, mention it, right? Focusing on men, that more than half of men say they don't get regular health screenings. And so looking at Caucasian men and men of color, 63% men of color don't go in and get regular health screenings. Over 50% of Caucasian men don't get regular health screenings. Whether or not that's a component of access to care, whether or not there's a stigma that's associated with it as well. But as a result, we're seeing that men are living sicker and dying sooner than women. Now, you've heard me use this term. And my colleague, to be honest, Eric Walsh, used this term living sicker and dying sooner as it relates to people of color and disparities. But we see from a gender perspective that men are living sicker and dying sooner than women. It's a silent crisis that has to rise to the level of attention. That's what June, this Men's Health Awareness Month, is about. That we see across the lifespan. Doesn't matter. It's not just during the risky behaviors of teenage years. It's from infancy all the way through that we see that there is a shift. There is a decline in terms of survival of male gender compared to female gender. We see this extend into midlife and old age, that boys and men alike are more likely to die than girls and women. Now, when we look at this a little bit closer, one of the things that you need to see, and so the teal bar, the blue bar, I'm not great with these kind of colors like this. I'm not colorblind, but not great. We see that that represents the amount of mortality or deaths that exist. The yellow bar is it for females. The teal bar is for men. And so we see, irrespective of your ethnicity, whether you're looking at African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, or Asian, we see that men have a higher death rate than women. This is in regards to heart disease, the number one killer. It is still the undisputed champion out there in terms of death and then morbidity and mortality. And we see this. The same for cancer, whether we're speaking of prostate cancer, multiple myeloma, colon cancer. When you compile all of them together, that men are more likely to die than women. Now, that makes sense if we're not getting in there to see the doctors. That means we're not having the adequate screening that's happening. We're not having the adequate treatment that's happening too as well as men. That's why it's important to, if you want to man up, going to see the doctor, get the checkup. And I'm going to pause for a second here, men. So women, if you have a man in your life, bring them in right now for this segment here. They need to hear this. I don't care what your sport is, if it's baseball, if it's soccer, if it's mixed martial arts fighting, if it's golf, if it's tennis, if it's basketball, if it's football. Every professional athlete has what? A coach. They have a coach that's giving them feedback on how they're doing. That coach is giving them a direction, that from a mental health awareness perspective. So we need to take that same perspective with all aspects of our body. From our mental health, we have to have a coach. That may be a therapist. That may be a psychologist. That may be a psychiatrist in some instances. That we have to have a cardiologist in some instances to help coach us and provide us feedback on what we're doing on a regular basis to make sure that we get the performance we want out of this thing called life. So this idea of manning up, as you can see, based on some of the research, although the dictionary says it describes a very positive attributes for manning up, right? But we see in practice, it leads to mental pressure, anxiety, a degree of negativity, this uncertainty about and the performance expectations, that despite this shadow of this brave person, we have a person who's distraught that's there, that oftentimes exists, and they're not separate. They're the same. And so, what's the answer to this? How can we really truly overcome this idea of manning up to achieve the goals that we want? I want to tell you that you have to get selfish. Yes, I am doing the play on words. Yes, I am bringing in some of the book stuff into this because I want to tell you this is the reason why I wrote this book. This book of getting selfish is so important because we have to learn that in order to achieve, live a life of purpose, to achieve our health goals, in order to live and be a functional member of this society, to live a life of purpose, we have to get selfish. Selfish. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, some may call this, and this is once again, this is Men's Health Awareness Month. Some may call Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player to have ever laced up a pair of shoes. Some may say it's Jerry West, rest in peace, who recently passed away during the 60s and 70s, was just phenomenal. Some may say that it was Magic Johnson. That's the era I grew up in. Some may say it's LeBron James, who is self-anointed the king and has the point total. Irrespective, what Michael Jordan said is, he said, to be successful, you have to be selfish, or else you'll never achieve. Now, he was speaking in terms of athletic performance. He was speaking in terms of putting yourself first to achieve your own personal goals. I want to submit to you, getting selfish isn't about just personal goals. It's about living a life of purpose, preparing yourself to be effective in this thing called life. And so when I speak about being selfish, I talk about the pillars of health, the center of which is food, whole food, plant-rich foods, plant-based foods, right? Absence of animal products and processed foods. But it begins with the S in spiritual, the E for exercise, movement, exercising belief. The L stands for love in action, love as a verb, forgiveness and gratitude. The F stands for plant-based foods, real food, whole foods, soul nourishing foods. The I stands for intimacy of relationships, friendships. The S stands for sleep, rest, and the H stands for humor, the joy of life and fulfillment. And what studies have told us, if you start really and you look at the idea of spirituality, and I'm gonna start first from the idea of spirit. It's a Latin root, spiritus, which means your breath. And so studies have told us that when we breathe in and we breathe out, we exhale, we activate the parasympathetic tone that helps to lower our stress hormones. It helps to bring us into this steady state, which is why you'll see people when they're getting ready to give a talk, they take deep breaths in and out. That before they take that shot to win the game, they take a deep breath in and out. And so there's power that's there. Even our kids, we can learn from our kids and this idea called the physiologic sigh. What do our kids do when they're upset? To soothe themselves, to calm themselves from the stress. They take a double inhalation followed by a prolonged exhalation, has been shown and demonstrated to lower the stress hormone cascade. Doing box breathing, these are tools that are there. We also know that ideas of meditation, which is really a perspective of focus, that what it does is it strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which is where we reason, this area right behind this head, like this big head of mine. And what that does is that helps strengthen our reasoning factors, our ability to process information, our ability to follow through with what we intend to do, right? There's power that's there of meditation and prayer too, as well, in terms of willpower. And so I bring this out inside of my book here. A lot of studies that tell us the power that it has on our endothelial health, reducing our stress hormones, and decreasing even our perception of stress. As a package, it begins to help us center ourselves as we prepare to man up. We have to get selfish. The first letter is S for spiritual. The second letter is E for exercise. Now, many times we think of exercise in terms of I'm going to have to do something I don't want to do. I have to run a mile for PE, physical education back in the day. I have to go to this class. I don't want to get sweaty and do it. But exercise can be everything from leisure activities with your friends, outdoors while you're getting fresh air and sunlight. That exercise includes just moving around, this concept of what we call NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Men and women, we don't have to set these big goals of saying, I need to exercise for 2 hours or an hour. You just need to move, stay in motion, the body in motion, lends itself towards beneficial outcomes. So the process of moving, we understand that just when you start to move after you've eaten, all of a sudden you can improve the metabolism of your blood sugar and lower your blood sugar levels. We understand the power of exercise, of walking simply, just simply walking and lowering the blood pressure. That we understand that it raises the good cholesterol and it can help optimize the bad cholesterol too as well. We understand that it can help trigger and help spur on your metabolism to help in terms of sustained weight loss. We understand that exercise is indeed a antidepressant and anxiolytic that begins to help lift the mood, stabilize you to offset these strains of life and these pressures. Because remember, stress equals demands minus resources. And you may feel as if you don't have the resources, but you have it once you begin to engage inside many of these activities. That's the power of exercise. The last part of E that I'll tell you is we have to exercise belief. That when we look inside the area of medicine, what do we understand that we compare every medication to? Something we call a placebo. What is a placebo? It's an inorganic and inert substance that has no biological activity. And we're comparing it to something that we feel is going to provide a biological activity. Whatever the new medication is or procedure, it has to beat out that other area, which is what we're calling the brain. It's the mindset. And so we understand that what you believe has so much power in terms of your ability to withstand disease and all of the aspects of life that we're facing. Love. The L stands for love. Love is an action. We understand that just embracing, that it is that part of love is the as a hormone, is the oxytocin generation. That's by being around people. That when instead of us when we're upset, instead of us going away, but if we embrace the intimacy of relationships, we get oxytocin, which is the tend and befriend. It helps the antithesis of the stress hormone cascade. It helps dilate the vessels. That when we use love as a verb, forgiveness and gratitude studies have shown that you improve blood perfusion to the heart. You have sustained longevity when you elicit forgiveness. Forgive yourself, men and women out there. Forgive yourself. Be thankful. Keep a gratitude journal. We talk about this. It actually, little things add up to a lot. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that counts, right? So we need to make sure we understand that. What about food, nourishment for our bodies? That we have to have a change of heart. We have to fill our heart with fruits and vegetables and whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds, right? That when we begin this process, man, I'm talking to you, man. We know that blood pressure is rampant throughout. And we know that when we begin to address our blood pressure, which is a risk factor for kidney dysfunction, as well as for strokes, it's one of the biggest risk factors for Alzheimer's. The Adventist Health Study told us that as we move from eating any and everything, the orange bar, towards the green bar, we begin to see astronomical improvements in our blood pressure, a lowering of our blood pressure, that when we add this to the other aspects, there's power that's there. Dean Ornish showed inside the heart disease reversal trial of an improvement in blood flow. I tell people all the time, we don't need to get into semantics of whether or not nutrition reverses coronary artery disease. What's my goal as a provider, as an interventional cardiologist? Help you feel better, live longer. Does transforming your diet help you live longer? The answer is yes. Does transforming your diet with whole food, plant-rich foods help ameliorate, get rid of symptoms? Yes, it does. Does adopting a whole food plant-based diet transform your gut microbiome that helps to sustain you to withstand recurrence of hospitalizations and have improved outcome and helpful with heart failure? The answer is yes. So we understand that there is power, that it's not just about doing it or the age at which you do it. It's about the amount of effort you put into it. That subsequent studies have really continually reaffirmed it's not just any, don't use terms like vegan. Right. Sorry, ouch. I'm talking to somebody out there, right? Here's the thing. It is the quality of food that you're eating. Whether or not it's standard American diet vegan style or standard American diet keto style. The problem is this highly processed, refined food substances that are generated lead to demise. And so studies have told us that when you adopt a healthful plant-based dietary eating pattern, that means fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds, that you begin to see an improvement astronomically, irrespective of your race, irrespective of your gender. We start to see a reduction in cardiovascular disease. The survival improves with a widening that's there. That recent studies have told us. I referred to the Dean Ornish study. He replicated the same process that we do in cardiac rehab. Whole food plant-based, stress reduction, smoking cessation, exercise, group therapy, having coaches for your mind, having coaches for your heart, having coaches for your diabetes. We call them doctors, right? That when you engage people with this, all of a sudden you can improve or decrease the likelihood of cognitive impairment or leading to dementias. That's powerful. That our lifestyle can be predictive, that our cancer risk can go down. It's never an issue of zero. The issue is, do we improve the odds that as we move towards a healthful plant-based diet, participants with cancer, with diabetes, that they tend to live longer and do better? That prostate cancer, not only do we improve the prostate specific antigen in some of the low risk prostate cancer patients, we see that the blood actually kills prostate cancer cells astronomically more than individuals who did not adopt this healthful dietary pattern. It comes as a package. That was one of the major critiques for Ornish years ago. Well, we don't know what the secret sauce is. Life is not one pill. It's not one substance. It's a sum of all of our existence. So that means that all the pillars of selfish are all important in this process, in this journey towards achieving this thing called health. I failed to mention one before we go on to intimacy of relationships, is that men oftentimes suffer with erectile dysfunction, the inability of this impotence. And we know that there is a huge vascular component as well as a mental component to this. And study after study, I love my friend and colleague, Dr. Rob Osfield, is doing wonderful work in New York, really demonstrating, continuing to add to the literature as it relates to the power of plant-based nutrition compared to those who do not, even in the area of erectile function. So we know that as you begin to transition your body over towards eating foods that are rich in fiber and phytonutrients, that you've seen a lower incidence of erectile dysfunction, which is powerful. So, men, this is an important tool, is this F called food. The I of intimacy of relationships. We understand the impact of loneliness. All right? Loneliness isn't something that just impacts women. Loneliness is all of us. Now that's different than social isolation. Social isolation is when you may be socially isolated, but you may not feel alone. You can be lonely and in a room of people where you don't have anyone to be vulnerable with, that you feel as if the relationships around you should be different than what they are. And you feel isolated. And this is a stressor. It brings about the stress cascade that then lends itself to cancer and diabetes and all the other ailments that we know, this inflammatory process. But when we begin this process of lowering our guard, right? Lowering our guard and having someone that we can become vulnerable with, there's power that's there. Now, some of you say, well, doc, I don't have anybody like that. Well, studies have told us that just simply when you have your pet, your companion, your emotional support animals, that what they do is that they improve the oxytocin, that tend to befriend hormone, which is the antithesis of stress hormone cascade, that it begins to lower perceived stress almost immediately. That we know that when we're in communities like trees, I love the trees. They call it the world wood web. That trees actually share nutrients. They go and pass nutrients and substances between each other. Some of the weaker trees that are there. We have to look to do this. We can learn so much from trees in terms of our process as a community. You need to get part of a community. This may be your community. This is the power of what Chef AJ has built and what we're building on the Selfish platform and soon to be released, drbatiste.com, which is out there now and on YouTube. And so we have to continue to do these things because it's important. I want to tell you, it's not just one thing. Nutrition is, I believe, the most powerful tool that's there, but it is supported by all these other avenues because birds of a feather flock together. And so if indeed you are going to be successful, right, in this whole venture, you need support that's there to help you move towards the goals that you want. That's the I of intimacy. The second S stands for sleep, rest, vacation, time away, to reset. We understand that when you get rest, it helps improve your perception of stress around you, this perceived stress. We know that when you get rest, when you get good sleep, it helps lower your stress hormones. We know that when you get good rest. It helps to consolidate your memories. It helps consolidate all your learnings into one. So as you learn information I'm presenting to you today, getting a good night's sleep is going to help it resonate and sink in. It's like the flavor when you're cooking. Sometimes that next day the food is tastier because now it's had a chance to settle in. That's like what sleep does for you. It's helping it to settle in and the flavor to come out and to burst in your mouth when you engage in it. But it's not just about the duration. You have to actually, there's some evidence that supports going to bed earlier between 9 to 11 is going to be added beneficial for you. But we know 7 to 9 hours is powerful. Getting daytime naps is important. Taking time to allow your body to reset. We don't do that with our phones, with our cars, with our computers. Well, I should say our cars that are battery operated, right? We charge them in because if we want them to perform, we need them to be fully ready. We can't do neglect anything less in our body. That by getting sleep, we improve our likelihood for diabetes to be controlled, decreasing our chance of cardiovascular events, as well as arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, high blood pressure, cancers too as well. We see the power that's there when we engage in this thing called sleep. And so I walk you through really a stepwise approach on how you can achieve this. And last I'll say is really we have to learn to laugh out loud in this thing called life. Wonderful study. We understand for men, they're looking at the testicular cancer and the aspect of joy and laughter in the process that it has. We know the story of Norman Cousins. And we know the stories too, as well, of many others who adopted the practice of laughter to heal themselves, decrease their stress, and heal their hearts. The sages have told us that it helps improve the lining of the vessels of the heart when we engage inside of this. This is why I wrote the book Selfish, is because I recognize that there is power. There's a greater power even beyond what we're aware than just the food alone. That in order for us to achieve the success we need in this life, we have to engage. So how can you achieve humor? Well, community potlucks. Studies have shown the benefit that now you're tapping into the intimacy, you're tapping into the joy, right? That are there, just those simple things right there that connect it. That when you exercise and you exercise with a loved one or with a close friend, and you do it outdoors, or you do it while you're meditating too as well, of yoga or other things and forest bathing, that all of a sudden you begin to combine the pillars to become the most effective. And that's where the power is. And that's why what Jordan said, once again, well, some may argue the greatest. He said, to be successful, you have to be selfish or else you'll never achieve. But here's the key part, he said. And once you get to your highest level, right? Once you get to your highest level, he said, then you have to be unselfish, stay reachable, stay in touch, don't isolate. What he's saying, and Jordan is one of the greatest, he is the greatest probably. What he's saying is that this is just a stepwise approach so you can be of service to others. That we have to learn to give back, that we have to learn to live a life of purpose, all right? That we have to learn to live a life of passion, that we have to stay reachable, in touch, and not isolate. These are important concepts to this idea of getting selfish. So, men out there, you're the leaders of your home. In some instances, I don't want to put that pressure on you, men, right? Some say that you may lead in different areas of your life, irrespective of where you are. You could be a man or a woman. I want to tell you today that if you commit to the principles of being selfish, it's going to help you man up. And so instead of it calling being a negative connotation, manning up is we're going to be better suited so we can manage our anxiety, that we're going to be able to navigate unexpected pressures by getting selfish, by getting selfish. Let's get selfish today, right? So if you haven't had a chance to get your copy, get your copy. Listen, I'm going to try and let's answer some questions that are out there. Chef AJ, are you ready to get selfish? Let's get selfish together, right? So I want to actually right now, I'm gonna challenge you, Chef AJ. I know your book hasn't gotten there yet because you asked me for a hard copy. I don't have a hard copy out yet. I have a soft copy, a paperback. But I want to challenge you to get selfish with me. We're going to adopt a 7-week course that I'm putting together. It's going to be on healthyheartnation.org. And I will invite all of you to go ahead and subscribe to it and get enrolled. And let's get on this journey together. Let's transform our lives of our men, our women, our kids, our grandparents, and make a better world together. Appreciate you guys spending some time with me today. If you have any questions, feel free, send them through and we'll make sure you answer them. All right.